and working in clubs. And then I met this guy who was a band manager. My mom was always a good judge of character. She's like, I don't like that guy. So I started hanging out with this dude. We ended up getting an apartment together. Again, I was working, gambling, and then I got introduced to drugs. I was like, I'll stop drinking. And the more you try, the more you fail.
New Year's Eve, 1999. Jason Ford partied like there was no tomorrow. The next morning, he was unconscious on the floor of O'Hare Airport, strapped into an ambulance, his heart failing, alone, terrified. And in that moment, everything changed.
I ended up at a hospital. No one knew I was there. I didn't call my mom or dad. You know, as an adult, I didn't want them to know. It was the most terrifying experience of my life. God's like, okay, if you're not gonna listen to me, this is how you're gonna pay attention.
Today, you will hear how a man on the brink of destruction found a redemption, faith, and a calling that would shock everyone who knew him.
Welcome back to the Jason Magar podcast. Today we're bringing in a special guest, Jason Ford. He's a licensed counselor that I work with. He has a really cool transformation to Christ story. And you may ask yourself, why is this have any relation to relationship? When you're a Christian, you have a relationship with Christ, and the journey he lets you come on doesn't allow you to waste a hurt. So any of the hurts, any of the bad things that we go through, God can use for his good. And I wanted to invite Jason so he could come in, share his story, and we'll ask him some questions. And hopefully this will touch you in a place that's meaningful to you. So welcome, Jason.
Thanks, man. Good to be here.
Easy to remember your name.
Yeah, easy to remember.
The epic Jason interviews Jason episode.
Got to be somewhere in his mid to late 40s if you're a Jason.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the name of the year.
Yeah.
Kind of there for a while. So it's trending down right now, but.
And it should stay because it's July, August, September,
Right.
October, November is
Yep.
our name. So the first letter from each spells
Took me a
Jason.
while in the stock market I'm like, what's that Jason? I don't understand that. And finally dawned on me July through November.
Very cool. So tell us about you. Where'd you grow up? What your parents kind of early childhood? Give
Yeah.
me some background there.
Yeah, well, we were just talking about, I'm a Cubs fan, so I grew up in south suburbs of Chicago, Joliet. I always tell people Joliet's so rough, we had 2 prisons, one on each side of town. And actually, the Blues Brothers, which is a movie way back, part of that filming was in the Stateville Correctional Center. My dad was a garbage man. My dad was he was an alcoholic, and I'm the youngest of 3 boys. So when I was 3, Mom said, "I'm done. You choose either the alcohol or the family." And my dad quit, went cold turkey, and actually. Yesterday marked her 60th anniversary. So that decision that my dad made to man up, if you will, and make a change, obviously changed the trajectory of my life. So I grew up in South Chicago. My brother's a little bit older than me. Sports was kind of the main thing, but my dad got in the garbage business after he, see how my ADD's already going. So my dad got in the garbage business after that. And his big first break in business was Stateville Correctional Center. And so in that movie, for like a nanosecond, you see his dumpster. And so that kind of started the family business of garbage. I didn't want to go to college. And my dad's like, all right, we'll put you on the truck. So obviously I'm a pretty little guy, and I wrestled since I was 5. So I was cutting weight to some degree already in like 3rd grade. My dad's like, hey, if you cut 3 more pounds, you could win state at 50. I'm like, okay, Dad, I won't eat for 2 days. So kind of dysfunctional from that perspective, but, so a lot of wrestling, a lot of soccer growing up. Come from a good family, right? Mom and dad, good morals, but Mom was Lutheran and Dad would be, I guess, categorized as Catholic light. So I went to church more so with my neighbors who are strong Catholics from Italy, who my mom's still best friends with. So they dragged me to church. I went to CCD a little bit when I could. I think when I was in 7th grade, I got kicked out
Of church?
Kicked out of CCD. Not because I was a pretty good kid. I only had like 1 detention in my life, but every other Wednesday I would miss because of wrestling. And then they just gave me the boot. They kicked me out. And so I didn't make my confirmation. But wrestling was my main priority. So when I was going into high school, it was either in Illinois, like if you live in one area, you can't hop schools and go, like if you live in Gilbert, you can't go to Chandler for like public school. So it was either public school, the horrible wrestling team, or go to the Catholic school. And so I went to Providence Catholic High School, and my coach my first year was, you remember the movie Rudy There's 5 brothers because they're from the same town, from Joliet. The youngest brother, Tim, was my high school wrestling coach. And of course, I didn't know anything about the movie, hadn't been out yet. But Tim was a great dude, so he recruited me. So I went to Providence, not because of the Catholic faith, but because they had a great wrestling program. Not that I was against that. So I went to Providence. And one interesting thing there, they actually recruited me sort of for the priesthood because I helped lead some retreats when I was a junior. We had 4 years of theology class, but to my recollection, like I don't think I ever remember like carrying a Bible in a theology class. I don't remember that. I remember studying world religions and, the difference between Christianity and this and that, but I never remember like diving into the Bible. So I was pretty biblically illiterate. But they were really like pressing on me for the priesthood. I'm like, if you change that marriage rule, maybe I'm in. But otherwise, I'm not sure this is for me. And so, I graduated Providence. My dad's lesson of putting me on the garbage truck definitely paid off because being 100 pounds soaking wet, and back in the day, there was no automatic can lifter. There was you. So I was back in the truck at like 4 a.m. My dad would drive me out to the route. It's pitch dark. When you're 16, that's the last thing you want to do is in the summer is get up at 4 a.m. Wild dogs, bad neighborhoods, lots of garbage. And garbage 101 is the poorer your neighborhood is, the more garbage you have. You just accumulate garbage. And then in the more wealthier neighborhoods, they always have like the one just shiny can and everything. But Dad put me on there for a couple summers, and then I'm like, wherever you want me to go to college, Dad, I'm in. That was it. So that got me to college. I got a small scholarship at the University of Illinois. And again, so like from a faith standpoint, I would dabble going to church, but I wouldn't have classified myself as a Christian. At that point, I think I believe God exists. I heard about this guy, Jesus, but I didn't understand the gospel. It was really never articulated to me in all that time. I started dating a girl like right into college named Nicole. Which, I was pretty homesick, I was about 2 hours away from school. So she was still in high school, a little bit younger than me. So, my sophomore year, I got an opportunity to start at Illinois, which, got a small scholarship, but I wasn't like a blue chip recruit. But things just broke my way. I got a chance to start. And Big Ten wrestling's like SEC and football. Everybody's really good. And you realize like you think you're good. And then you realize like you're not so good. But that was a great opportunity. I got hurt that year against Northwestern, kind of 2/3 through the season. The coach was like, "You're all we got, kid. You're wrestling. I don't care if you got one shoulder or not." So I'm like, "Okay, coach, I'll give you what I got." And so it was a rough rest of the year. Finished the year. Coach kind of questioned my toughness at the end of that year in front of the team, which kind of hurt. But he was a new coach. He was Dan Gable's assistant. Dan Gable's like the legend coach. Because when I got there, Illinois was so bad. Like we were 11th in the Big Ten, if that's even possible. Right? We were terrible. But we got a new coach. He changed the direction of the program, and within like 3 years, Illinois was like top 3 in the Big Ten. But after my sophomore year, I was so burned out of wrestling. I had wrestled since I was 5. And then the girl thing, the girl became the idol, right? And so with all that, after my sophomore year, I think I'm done wrestling. Stayed in school, got my degree, and we continued to date. My dad was devastated because, wrestling was everything for my dad. So that caused a little friction with me and Dad. But I was just kind of burned out. So got my degree in journalism. Me and the girl now are engaged. And then, but I'm just kind of living the normal life, going out, drinking, doing all those things. And then she got really kind of weird. And I knew something was wrong. And without going into too much details, I'm not sure if she's still married to the guy, but if they're still married, he's probably in his 80s. So I didn't have as much bankroll as he had. So obviously that got really weird. But that was devastating to me.
So she was cheating on you with an older.
Well, I don't know what transpired at that time, but eventually she ended up with this guy who was like best friends with her dad, who ended up actually being my gambling bookie because, we'll get into like my addictions. Gambling was one of them. Well, he was my bookie. This was before DraftKings.
The guy Nicole was with was your bookie?
Yeah, he was my bookie. Yeah, so I was very like twisted. So there was no DraftKings back then, there was a bookie. So that just crushed me. But to that point, I mean, I'd go out and drink alcohol, but I never touched a drug all the way through college. Guys would smoke pot, and I'm like, "You're a loser, get away from me," kind of thing. when we broke up, I was just lost because it was just about the girl, right? And if you have no identity in Christ, and your identity is just in this relationship, and then she says bye-bye, like, who are you? And so I'm looking, and I told you my degree is in journalism. I couldn't find a job in that field. It's really hard. Like, oh, we'll pay you as an unpaid intern. I'm like, wait, I have my degree. I have a degree now. You're going to pay me. And so it was really hard to get a job. So I'm watching TV one day. I see a ad for bartending school. So I signed up for bartending school, which was probably a bad choice. That got me into being a bartender, and it was good, quick cash. And then, I worked different jobs, and I'm working in clubs. And then I met this guy who was he was a band manager. Probably not the best dude. My mom hated him. My mom was always a good judge of character. She's like, I don't like that guy. And mom knew. So I started hanging out with this dude. We ended up getting an apartment together. Again, I was working, gambling, and then I got introduced to drugs. I was probably like 22, but I had no direction. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Probably should have remembered my dad was a raging alcoholic before I tried to experiment. So I got introduced to like street drugs like ecstasy, ketamine, things like that. And I didn't know I had ADHD at that point. No one ever told me. I don't think I had even heard of it, but the ecstasy probably almost was like a self-medication because I felt like normal, unlike drinking. And so I just like took off. That became kind of my job, was just gambling, drugs, and bartending for about 3-4 years. And I have a very compulsive behavior pattern. And so I'm either all in or I'm not in. And so that continued for about 4 years.
So when your dad stopped drinking, did he do any of the work, or did he just become a dry drunk?
Yeah, Dad never did a day of rehab.
Okay.
It's just, old school.
So he never rewired the brain after the addiction? And
no, he just quit drinking, quit smoking too, all at the same time.
That's not, if you just cold turkey quit like that, it's not technically rewiring.
No, your brain, through addiction, your brain gets rewired, and then the 12 steps programs are the only way to rewire your brain. If you use alcohol, for an example, the chemical makeup of alcohol is poison. So you are using a chemical that is a poison to get in and release dopamine. And once your brain says, this is bad, I don't want it, you teach your brain that poison is good. And that way, the 12 steps helps you rewire your brain. And if you just stop using the substance, you're still an addict. You're just in a dry drunk is the term. It's kind of a old term, but it just means you still do all of the behaviors. You avoid emotional processing. You avoid often conflict. You really just don't get to a healthy spot. You just stop using the substance. And most of the time, you just pick up a cross addiction. So if you stop chemicals, you may go to a process: shopping, eating, gambling, pornography. But typically, if you don't do the 12 steps and get your brain rewired, then you stay in an addict state, just not using. So you're into drugs, you're into gambling.
Yeah,
What was your gambling look like, and what did the drug use look like?
So it probably wasn't good that there was a riverboat casino, like a mile and a half from our house. That was great. I could run there. I literally ran there, and then we would boat, and so there's the riverboat. So it started with like blackjack, craps, but then morphed into sports because I knew everything about sports. I want to be a sports journalist. So here's rule number one about betting sports: like, you can know everything in the world, but it doesn't mean you're going to be successful.
Yep.
Right? Because things happen when you bet on sports, So yeah, I probably racked up about $20,000 in debt from gambling.
You were what age?
It started when I was about 22, and it culminated to about 26. So just that culminated basically on January 1st, 2000. So I'm living in New York City because I was bartending. I got an opportunity to like house sit for this executive for a big company. He's like, take care of my dog, take care of my place. I'm not home much. You can live in New York City for free. I'm like, oh, it's great. So I got a job at a place called Chase Lounge. But all my buddies, my partying buddies from Chicago, like, dude, you got to come back, ring in the new millennium, blah, blah, blah. Because I didn't know basically anybody in New York. So I'm like, all right. So went back, partied, did the whole normal thing, but probably partied above and beyond. And the next morning I'm at O'Hare Airport, flying back to New York, go back to work. And I'm just sitting there at the gate. after a night of partying, and I'm like, I just start sweating. And I just remember walking to the ticket counters. Probably the last thing I remember, I'm like, I don't feel good. And that's all I remember. I passed out, got the ambulance. Next thing you know, like, I think I came to in the ambulance, and I'm just looking at the guy, and you can tell, obviously, all I can kind of like figure out is like, this ain't good, and I ended up at a hospital called Resurrection Hospital in Chicago, because there are no coincidences with God. I was by myself in a hospital for 2.5 days. No one knew I was there. I didn't call my mom or dad. I was an adult. I didn't want them to know. It was the most terrifying experience of my life, because God's like, okay, if you're not going to listen to me, this is how you're going to pay attention. So that was sort of my come to Jesus moment.
And I had a 21-year-old that played softball for me, and he got leukemia, and he called me and asked me to come in, and I went in and I said, and God told me, he goes, tell him sometimes if you don't pay attention, I'll put you on your back, so the only place you have is to look up at me. And so I told this 21-year-old with leukemia that, and I'm just like, he's like, I think you're right. Maybe God is getting my attention. So it's funny. God's like, okay, you don't want to pay attention? Let me put you on your back, so the only place you can look is up.
Yeah. He'll do whatever he has to do, right, to get our attention. Yeah, and so something happened to me in that hospital. I mean, just literally, I was shaken to my core just from the trauma, and so, and I had damage to my heart valve. I don't know the medical term, but I had to sign against their, consent or whatever, because they didn't want me to leave. But I'm like, I got to get out of here. So went back to New York, and all the kind of the details are kind of muddy. I left New York, went back to Chicago. I basically packed up all my stuff. My mom, because moms have great intuition, she knew like I was not doing well. And so anyway, and I ended up moving out to the Bay Area with my brother Shane. He's a family law specialist. He's like, my brother's not a believer, but he's like, hey, you can stay here as long as you need to get on your feet. And so was raised Catholic. And so now we're in March, basically, of 2000, and I walk in by accident to a Pentecostal church in the heart of San Francisco, because God's got a sense of humor. And I was raised Catholic. Okay, one thing about Catholic church, don't be late. Don't be late to Catholic church, because you will get stared down. I mean this in all love, right? It's just it's very formal. I walk in this Pentecostal church, people are like, I didn't know what raising hands meant, and why these people singing and dancing, and they're all happy. And I was like freaked out. And the lighting guy in the upper room, the upper balcony there, named Dan Murphy, basically, there was nowhere to sit. He like found me a seat. He's like, sit down. He basically sat me down. He ended up being in my men's group, which I didn't even know what that meant. And so I became kind of Dan's understudy. He kind of took me under his wing, and I don't remember exactly what the pastor preached. I think it was from 1 Peter that day, but I heard the gospel articulated to some capacity, and probably within a month I got baptized in that church, and those guys adopted me into their men's group and kind of shepherded me for a year and kind of taught me the ropes and learned how to pray. Didn't know. I mean, I knew how to pray Hail Mary and Our Father and all those things, but I didn't know how to pray. And that's kind of the origins of my testimony, finding Christ.
So when you gave your life to Christ, what changed?
Well, one thing that changed right away is my mouth. My buddy's in the CIA, Darren, who's probably a much stronger believer than I am. The kid knows a word like front and back. He's in the CIA now. Darren had a terrible mouth, and we went everywhere together. And so I developed a pretty foul mouth, and literally like overnight, that just went away. So that's the first thing I remember. And I remember them saying, like, they're telling me about this men's group. I'm like, okay, well, what do you guys do in the men's group? This sounds weird. And they're going to tell me, I'm like, okay, read the Bible study. Hey, what night is it? No, it's on Monday night. And then I'm like, I can't. And they're like, what do you mean you can't? I'm like, Monday Night Football. I'm like, that was serious. I'm like, I can't go. And they're like, you can go. And this was before, like, you could, like, I don't remember, like, taping it and anything like that. So I had to, like, give up my Monday Night Football idol for men's group. And so I stayed there I lived in San Francisco or the Bay Area for about a year, worked at Sony, then took a job as a PE teacher. And then my folks live here. And so I came to visit them for the summer. And then kind of God called me to Arizona. I started going to a church in Fountain Hills, and they were looking for a youth pastor. And I'm like, I'm just here to visit, because I was going to move to San Diego. Little did I know that San Diego's as expensive as San Francisco, because I kind of got into triathlons. And so they kept hammering me every week. And so then with my background in wrestling, the junior high just happened to have a wrestling coach vacancy open. And so, yeah, I got paid $2,000 to do that, but it wasn't that. I'm like, I want to coach wrestling. And so I became the official youth pastor of Fountain Hills Community Church and started coaching wrestling back in 2001 at that point.
Were you about like 30 something at that point?
28, 27, 28.
Okay.
Yep. And so it's just really, really all I could bring to that youth group was, very little biblical knowledge, but a testimony and a heart for the Lord, and just being transparent with the kids. Like, hey, you have a choice, either follow God or follow your own ways, and share with them my story. And, just try to be a man of conviction. But, God just took away, ever since that day, I never touched a drug, never drank, gambled once with my wife with permission for about 2 hours, only lost $100. But that was the extent of anything after that. Drugs, alcohol, it's just kind of been eliminated, and really took away the desire to do that. That first 6 months was kind of rough of resetting myself. Ended up doing some Celebrate Recovery down the road, ended up leading that a little bit, but got myself any day to a triathlon. Part of the reason I think I ventured into drugs is, I had wrestling was my thing, soccer was my thing, and then the girl's gone and wrestling's gone. I got nothing, and so I needed a competitive outlet. So I started running and did the Boston Marathon and got into triathlon. And then you'll find a lot of former addicts in marathon or triathlon because they're basically taking, one very negative addiction into something else.
Well, you can get addicted to endorphins too and working out, but endorphins are, you can't go buy them. So, if you're going to get high, at least it's on a workout is a little bit better, but as long as it doesn't become the obsession and the compulsion. So you're working as a wrestling coach. Are you the youth pastor?
I'm the youth pastor. Yeah. I'm doing that like 30 hours a week. And so our pastor, Pastor Larry's like, you probably could use some training in seminary. And so I'm like, okay, sign me up. So they put me in Phoenix Seminary. Not to say I was going to get a master's of divinity, but I'm like, okay, Pastor Larry, whatever you say. So went to Phoenix Seminary, took a few classes, and then at some point in that, met some people, and then they had a counseling program there. And so I'm like, I'll take one of those classes. And so I took a class in counseling, really liked it, and I can kind of connect to my story. A lot of former addicts end up being counselors, as you probably know. But then hermeneutics class came around, and, hermeneutics, which is biblical interpretation. And so hermeneutics was part of the counseling program requirement at Phoenix Seminary. That class killed me. I could, Dr. Fred Shea, bless his heart, strong theologian. I'm like, I can't do this. I can't. It's just too much. And so I put a pause on seminary. And so youth pastor for 4 or 5 years. Then I got into wellness. I worked as a wellness coach at Intel for like 8 years. Love health, pretty obsessional about health. And then that job just went away until I had a different contractor. And then I worked for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes for 7 years, which was a really good fit. Sports ministry was like, hey, this is great. I get to preach the gospel to athletes, share with them my story. Hardest part of that is fundraising. You're a missionary. So if you're going to make $60,000 a year, you probably have to raise about $90,000, $100,000 to operate your ministry. So that was rough, kind of being an introvert, asking people to support you, but God provided. And then somewhere along that way, during FCA, God just kind of prompted me to call Phoenix Seminary back because one of my philosophies in life is finish what you start. It's really what I try to teach my kids. Like, hey, you joined baseball this year. You might hate it, but you signed up. You don't have to play next year, but you're not quitting. We don't quit. Fords don't quit. And so, because my sophomore year, even though I finished the year wrestling, it still kind of stays with me that I didn't finish those last 2 years wrestling. I mean, I was starting, and so there's always kind of like the what if. I mean, I was burned out, but it just never sat well with me not finishing that. So I'm like, I'm going to go back and finish that degree. So it took me 3.5 years, I think, to go back to Phoenix Seminary while I'm working full time. I had the blessing of FCA, so that was pretty challenging, having 2 kids, married, a job, and seminary. But by God's grace, I got through, graduated in late 2021, and started working along with yourself and with PCA counseling and beginning 2022, and I am.
Very cool. Have you read the book Addicted to the Monkey Mind?
Nope.
Okay. So through our upbringing and our shame-based culture that we're in, we develop beliefs about ourselves. And it's things that we believe are true, even if they're not. And through that lifestyle, that had to help you develop some beliefs about yourself that are negative. What did that lifestyle, the drugs, the gambling, all of that, what beliefs did you gain about yourself through that could have been negative that replay in your brain?
That I still dwell on, or just that I still believe, or is this like initially?
Either ones you've worked through or ones
Yeah.
you're still carrying.
Yeah. A good question. Well, I've always kind of had to battle through you're a quitter. Because there was a college thing, but so third grade, I was state champ. My oldest brother is 7 years older than me. We had a wrestling mat in our garage. So I didn't even have a choice. I was like the dummy for my brother for all his moves. And so my brother coached me up. And so started in first grade, state champ, third grade year. Fourth grade year, I was sick like the whole season. I had strep throat twice. I got chunky, sitting watching Star Wars on the couch with mom, gained like 8 pounds. And then right at the end of the year, they're like, okay, you're wrestling 55 or 60. Threw me in the regional tournament. I was state champ. I had like one loss the year before. Lost first round in the regional tournament. And I was so ashamed that, I was still in the tournament, but I'm like, Dad, I don't want to wrestle. Take me home. And and my dad's like, no, you're fine. You're fine. I'm like, I was just so embarrassed. And so we left halfway through the tournament. And so I actually ended up doing some EMDR. Once I got trained in eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which is trauma-based work, because that you're a quitter thing, even though I ended up being state champ again in 8th grade and was state placer in high school, that quitter thing re-evolved after college, after sophomore year, quitting wrestling. So it came back. And so that was still like there, like you're a quitter. There's always that inner voice of you're a quitter. No matter how much I accomplished, college degree, you're a quitter. Next degree, you're a quitter. 13, 14 Ironmans, you're a quitter. So I've always kind of battled that. Try to use that to my kind of as a motivating tool, but that the enemy is always kind of over there on my shoulder saying you're a quitter.
Yeah. And that's what the enemy does. He takes those negative messages and those core beliefs that we have about ourselves and replays them in our mind because he knows you're already struggling with it. So I'm going to attack you where you're weak. Let's talk a little bit more about EMDR for people who don't know about it. And I know you do it, and just kind of give the overview of why it's good and kind of what that process looks like. So if somebody's struggling with trauma and they want to reach out to somebody that does EMDR.
So EMDR is called eye movement desensitization reprocessing. So you're trying to reprocess trauma from the past. I'm no expert in it, but I was trained. You have to be trained in to use it. It was started in the late 70s, I believe. Francine Shapiro, really to help vets with PTSD. And so it's got more research behind it than everything besides cognitive behavioral therapy. And so if you think about being a garbage man and having a paper route, like wild dogs running around is always like terrifies me. And so if you got bit by a pit bull, you may love dogs, but that changes the way that you perceive dogs, especially dogs running around loose. So if you have a bad bite from a dog, it doesn't have to be a pit bull, any dog. Well, next time you're jogging and you see a dog running down the street, run at you, you're going to go right into flight or fight response, and you're going to go right back to that moment when you got bit. And so essentially, like if you think about kind of have a knot in your brain, EMDR is trying to come along and reprocess that trauma, not so that you don't believe that the memory exists or forget about the memory, but that the memory goes from having a high trauma rate of a 10. We ask people, how traumatic is that memory to you today out of a 10? Oh, it's an 8. So through the method of EMDR, which helps the left and right hemisphere of the brain promote memory recall, you're reprocessing the trauma through the method to help normalize the memory. So you're dialing down the trauma so then it becomes just an event that happened and doesn't have that same flight or fight traumatic response to you. Isn't always effective, but is a really fast way, I think, to almost speed read through trauma as opposed to just talk therapy, because it's very organic, because it's really, the counselor is just really the guide. You're not oh, well, tell me more about that. You're just okay, I remember I was in the pool and I started to go under, and I'm okay, notice that. And then you you do your EMDR therapy, however you're going to do it, and then you're just allowing the client to just kind of relive the experience, and you're a guide for them.
What was this?
So, so EMDR was initially started, you use the hand motion and you have your client follow the eyes, follow your fingers with their eyes. And when you look left to right, that the left and right hemisphere of the brain, that helps promote memory recall. We use buzzies, the pulsators is another way to help trigger that same effect. You can use audio, and then there's another method as well. There's audio, pulsators, the hand motion, and another method, but all help promote that memory recall.
What if the person is like really, really struggling with rehearsing that? Do they stay at a low, or how do you pull them into an almost neutral state?
If they're very like heightened.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Because if it just feels like it's just a dive bomb, just when you're like, whoa. Does that happen?
Yeah. I remember working with one guy who's had a strong porn addiction, which can be really effective for that too. And he's solicited prostitution and everything like that. And so again, you're just tapping into that, and I mean, just bawling like a little kid. So it is a very intense process a lot of times, but at the end of every session, you do what's called safe, calm place. So you have the client focus on something that's very calming, like the ocean or a golf course, or whatever, or a cabin in the woods, whatever brings them a sense of calmness and serenity. You help dial down that being emotionally, whatever the word would be, heightened. You help dial that down before your session ends. And then you just kind of coach them through, hey, you may have some dreams about this week, because we're bringing up stuff that hasn't been brought up in a while. But a lot of times, quite honestly, the next session they come back, they're like, I don't know if I want to do that today.
Just wanted to take a quick break from the episode. Hope you're enjoying it. I would love to help revolutionize your relationship. I will be releasing The Business of Relationships, and you can get your copy on pre-order. If you want to click below, give me your information. I will alert you as soon as the book is ready. I'm working really hard to compile my 18 years of experience of studying relationships and my 30 years of business experience to help get this together in a way that makes sense, that you can build your relationship, prepare yourself for a relationship, interview the candidates for your marriage, and then successfully run a business household that allows your relationship to succeed in a way that it never would without this framework. Hope you're enjoying.
Is it too bold to say that in like a simplified way? It's just really getting someone to verbally process something traumatic and then correlate it with something calm and by force? Is that really what it is, to try and create a new level and like to get that intensity down? Is it that simple?
In terms of the safe, calm place of just dialing,
just EMDR in general as like a concept, is it really just a correlation thing and getting it out and then correlating it with something peaceful? Is it that simple, or is it a lot more in depth once you get into it?
I don't know if I can answer that directly. All I do know is that, like when I did quitting wrestling isn't like that highly traumatic. You know what I mean? It wasn't like it was a 10, but it was probably like a 6. But through the EMDR, in the training, like, you're going through, okay, tell me what happened. I was walking off the mat, and I remember seeing my dad, and I just started crying, and I told him to take me home, and then you just reprocessing, and then like, okay, notice that, and then they run you through another set, and then what else you noticing? Oh, I noticed my dad in college, he just said the same thing, told me I was a quitter, whatever. So now you just jump. So it's not like a linear recollection of like this happened and this happened. There's some of that, but then you can just bounce all over the place, but it usually has a theme, because the quitting in 4th grade was related to the quitting in college. They both revolved around my dad and wrestling. And so things kind of came up that I had no idea were even kind of like in there. I hadn't really really done a lot of thinking about it, other than I quit. And so then I realized I had maybe like still some like resentment towards my dad about the wrestling that I hadn't like processed. And so I don't know, whatever it did, I did it just for like 40 minutes. But it did give me kind of a sense of peace about the whole situation, and kind of allowed me to kind of move on. And so, cause I was pretty skeptical going into it for the training. I was mandated by my internship, like, you have to do EMDR. I'm like, I don't want to do this. This is stupid. But this is part of the training. And so that kind of sold me like, hey, this thing could be effective. I will tell you that some counselors use it as a god. EMDR is like the savior of all things. It's just below Jesus in terms of his effectiveness. And so, I don't subscribe to that. It's a tool, and your client has to be open to it. And so some clients are just like, I don't think I want to do that, or we'll try it. But most clients that I think really like are open. Sometimes your overly analytical clients, they overthink it. They think they're doing it wrong. I'm like, just tell me what are you noticing? What's going on up here? Just tell me. And they're like, well, what am I supposed to? I'm like, just tell me, what are you noticing right now? What's going on in your mind? What are you thinking about? What memories are coming up? It's as simple as that. It has to be like a very organic process. Your overly analytical guys can like overcomplicate it. But I've found it to be a pretty effective tool.
I like how you said it's just a tool that's good context to understand how it's used in practice.
Yes.
It's not like it sounds very like kind of gaudy, like, oh, this is a solution, of it to everybody. Let's use it for everything. I could see it being abused.
Absolutely.
Because it has that kind of voodoo, even when
Absolutely.
you do this.
Absolutely. And I tell people, like, this isn't hypnotism. I'm not doing any of that, But I know a lot of strong Christian counselors that use this method. And so, but yes, God is in control of all things. As a Christian counselor, it's an integrated approach, right? Because modern psychology is man has the answer. But as believers, we know that that's not true.
Mm.
Yeah, I like when I use Billy's office and her machines there, and people are like, "What's that?" I'm like, "Electric shock therapy," because it looks like a shock, and they're like, "Really?" I'm like, "No, it's EMDR."
Yeah.
You being poker face.
I could see you saying that.
Yeah, it entertains
All
me.
I can say about Jason is like, well, first when, like, I don't know, maybe I was there a year and he came on and I'm like, hey, you got to come up with like a different name because I was here first thing. But Jason has like more fun, and I don't know what's going on in the sessions. Like, and I laugh at my clients, but I'm like, even my clients sometimes are like, man, what's going on over there in that next room? They're like laughing away and having a good time. And almost like my client's like, I think I want to go over in that room.
You have like 3 white noise machines outside his door, and then one a regular person.
Like, quiet down, man, quiet down.
I say sometimes to my clients, I'm like, should therapy be this fun?
Right?
Because it can be. And when you're talking about EMDR as the God, I think a lot of counselors get caught into, I know one tool and I'm just going to rely on that. And they don't broaden themselves to understand different areas and different ways of tackling and approaching. And even more, when you dive out, you still find it's because I use written exposure therapy because I haven't been trained in EMDR. And it's the exact same thing. It's just done differently. And the writing is kind of going back to that recollection, but it's self-paced. So if it becomes too intense, if it's too much, stop, walk away from the book and come back. And it allows you to dig deep. And I had one client, he told me it lifted 40 some odd years of weight that he had on his shoulder by doing that written exposure therapy. And I'm like, all right, that's why I do this job, because it's really cool.
Yeah, those are the wins that keeps you going.
Yeah, I had one week where like all wins. I'm like, this isn't normal.
Yeah.
I'm like, I need somebody to be in bad shape.
That can be a hard thing about being a therapist or a counselor is like, being an athlete, there's a win and a loss, right? Either won the wrestling match or I lost, or won the soccer game. As a counselor, you hope you're making progress. And sometimes it is very it can be more tangible, but sometimes it's not very measurable. You just have to trust in the Lord and trust the process. But sometimes clients just kind of you work with them for a while, and sometimes they just kind of disappear. You're not gonna stalk them, and then you're like, I wonder if they got what they needed, or did I do something wrong? You're kind of left wondering sometimes, and you can add, there's a term for it in terms of, I think it speaks to some counselors' insecurity. Maybe that's what it speaks to. So
going back to those core beliefs of what you tell yourself that you know subconsciously. You brought up porn, and I'm sure you never get any clients ever that are dealing with it.
Once in a while.
What's
certainly no one in the church.
Oh no, never happens there. But talk a little bit about what that struggle looks like for people. Kind of not, and I know I when I talk to people about addiction, chemical addiction is easy to see your life's a mess. If you're a heroin addict, people overdose all the time. It's easy to know that you're going to die if you keep using your chemical. The process is it's a little harder to convince somebody, how am I going to die from watching porn? because it is a disease. I mean, it is classified, so anybody that wanted to prove it's not a disease has already failed, or we wouldn't be able to talk about it as a disease. But what are you noticing when you're dealing with porn? What's the themes, and what do you kind of help people see?
Yeah. Well, I certainly signed up for this job to be like some porn expert, so I don't even pretend to be that. I'm like, man, I had no idea, because I work on 90% with guys. Not that women don't have porn issues as well, but and I work with range 12 and up, so even a lot of my adolescent clients obviously have this issue. So sometimes it's just heavy, man, or a lot of times it's heavy. Like I just go home kind of. It's heavy because it actually is, and it's kind of like a sidebar note, but as a therapist, it's like, then you're just, your mind's thinking of like porn more. It's just because it's a topic of conversation a lot of times. And I go home and tell my wife, I'm like, I just like, I don't know, it's heard too much today kind of thing. So if you're not careful, it can kind of bring you down. Well, I mean, it just kills the spirit, Clients complain they're lethargic. They don't know how to talk to women anymore. They lack motivation. They're bored. They're unmotivated. So those are some of the after effects or the effects of pornography. Is just not a very joyful life, dark life, and they're just caught in that web. And then it's I'll try harder, right? Well, that was my thing. I was like, I'll stop drinking. When it was alcohol first, like. And the more you try, the more you fail. So I think the effect is just a darker life, a less fulfilled life, less confidence, less joy, and then lack of ability to communicate in a healthy way to the opposite sex. And then in marriage, it's, well, I didn't choose this purposely, but I don't need to pursue my partner because I got this thing over here. And then sort of the fallacy of guys who think that like, well, A, my wife doesn't care, and like B, it doesn't affect our marriage. Also, okay. Tell me more about that. So that's a little bit of the denial part of it. But I look at it as just as deflating or decimating as any other form of. It might not kill you as fast, but it kills the soul.
I was just talking to my dad about it literally last night, and then Ariana about this 2 days ago. And what is the mental and the brain chemistry side of pornography? Because I was watching this podcast about it, and it gets very in depth, but it also is kind of simple. Like it hijacks like the dopamine aspect of your brain, but then there's another chemical makeup aspect I think that it affects, if I remember right.
Is it serotonin?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Can you speak on that for someone who doesn't know?
Yeah, every addiction is to release dopamine, and so chemical addicts put a chemical in their brain that mimics the chemicals that are already there to get it to release dopamine. And that's the pleasure center of our brain. It feels good. We like dopamine. I never met a person yet that didn't like dopamine. So we all like that feeling of good. And process addiction does the exact same thing. It's that process that elicits that dopamine because it's exciting. Ooh, I'm going to watch porn. Ooh, my wife is in the other room. Ooh, I'm going to get away with this. And it's all those little things that get that dopamine to come out through that process. And there's an OCD component to addiction. And once you get in the compulsion, and I tell clients, I had a guy that I knew, he said, I knew there was a compulsive component to addiction when I was sitting in the parking lot of the grocery store. I knew I was going to lose my marriage, my job, and my house, and I still walked in and bought a bottle. And that's when you're in deep addiction. It's not about your will. It's not about when that brain takes over and says, I have to have this or my life is no good. And that's the only thing that gets the dopamine. And the more you use process and chemicals to get the dopamine, the less your body actually releases them by themselves. So it really just takes away your own ability to feel good without that.
Because you literally can just do this, and then it's like you get it, you do that enough over and over and over. Next thing you know, you have this down or away, and you try and do something. It's like, why can't my brain get to a place of like motivation to do X, Y, Z or anything in life.
Yeah. And if you took brain scans, the porn addict just picking up his phone, you'd start to see the excitement. You'd see the wave of excitement rise up in him, knowing I'm about to get my drug of choice.
And I think that speaks to kind of the addiction to technology, and ADHD, right? I mean, like just the link, because they theorize that with people with ADHD, there's a lack of dopamine production. And so when I look kind of at my story, not to give you an out, but it's like, and once I started doing drugs, I'm like, oh, I feel great. And then it's just like, if you have that compulsion, and it's just like, then you're just living, sleeping, breathing to feed that. And then all the things that you know about life and about yourself and about doing the right thing and being disciplined. I mean, like, it was such a bizarre lifestyle. I was doing drugs, but I'd go to the gym, eat skinless chicken, work out 2.5 hours a week, 2.5 hours a day, and then go do drugs 4 hours a night, and then repeat and do the same thing. Why am I eating skinless chicken and cottage cheese when I'm like destroying my body? It's just like, it's just very dysfunctional. But it's just with technology now, it's like, we're working with athletes now. I'm a cross country coach for my kids' team, and I just love coaching. And I'm like, you've got to produce your own highs in a healthy way, right? But society, like, they give you the artificial highs, but you got to earn it, as Jason said earlier. And anything can be like, I'm probably an exercise addict if you were to ask my wife, although I've dialed it down a little bit. But it's like getting your master's degree produces a natural high, accomplishing things, serving people, going down the street and serving the poor creates a natural high. That's a God-given high. You earned it. Scrolling on your phone, you didn't earn it. And that's, again, it's not like evil per se, but the things that we artificially manufacture, in a sense, playing video games all day. I mean, maybe there's some value of connecting. But I see that in somebody that I know, I wouldn't want to say his name because he'd get upset, but be like a great kid and do the right thing. But then when it comes to technology, lie, steal, cheat, manipulate, look you right in the face and say, I didn't do it, because he's got to get to the game. You see a lot of kids with ADHD kids in general love video games, but kids I work with ADHD, man, it's like, or autism, and that video game thing, it's like a real deal, because it's feeding their brain what it wants, and it can get obviously a little bit out of control.
And if you do have faith and you're a Christian, when you put something in the place of God, whether it's technology, whether it's your phone, and it's impacting your life in a negative way. And it's funny, because when I get people, you don't want to do couples, so.
No way. Oh, instead of that, Jason. No, I don't do that.
You don't do couples?
Dude, I did one couples thing. Oh my gosh. And they weren't even married. I never did that in my internship. I said, no. And then I just started new, and Billy's like, I have this guy, he's got a girlfriend, you want to do it? And I'm like, sure. Well, they weren't married. The guy was Jewish. The girl was Christian. He was secretly seeing a man that he was actually married to. She didn't know. He was married to him for tax. Dude, I talk about like an absolute disaster. I'm like, all this comes out, but the girl doesn't know about this. Oh my gosh. I'm like, one and done, man. One and done, like a basketball superstar in college. One and done.
Are you just like, it's just too much? Like, you'd rather just, like, you need to hone in on like one person? Is that what
I mean, at least I should have actually took somebody that was actually married.
Yeah.
And so God has a sense of humor, right? So God was telling me in that space, this ain't your lane, bro. Stay in your lane.
Well, marriage doesn't mean it's any less messed up. It's probably even more messed up when you get to it, but.
Jason over here gets excited because he gets to ping pong.
Yeah.
It's great for ADD because, you can, and I always say ADD is my superpower. And I know it's all ADHD now, but I'm old and I have ADD. So,
but you're right though, because I had a mom last night be like, "Oh, I thought ADHD was just because I was maybe suggesting someone in her family has the ADHD tendencies," and she's like, "Yeah, but he's not hyperactive." I'm like, "He doesn't have to be hyperactive. He could be a total space cadet." She's like, "But it's called ADHD." I'm like, "Well, so
it's simplification for the DSM.
It can be a little bit confusing for people.
That book's too thick.
You don't
anyways.
have to be you don't have to be hyperactive to have ADHDs.
Yeah, and they did the same with autism, got rid of Asperger's and all the other designations just to make it easier for us and psychologists. But yeah, couples are fun. I really enjoy it. But how many new clients? So say you get 30 new clients. How many of them do you think are struggling with porn? Would you
That
say?
I know about? Because there's the ones you know about, and then the ones that I'm sure there's a lot that I work with that just don't bring it up,
Yeah.
you know? So I would say the ones I work with for guys, oh man, I'd have to trim, I mean, over 50%. Over 50%. I'd say maybe somewhere from like 55 to 65%.
Do you ask them directly in your intake? Are you, do you use porn? Any other?
Addictions. Do you have any current or past addictions?
Most people don't classify porn as an addiction.
That's what me and my wife were talking about, and that was like a big conversation at the dinner table was, do you even, like, if, for instance, I have a friend that needs help, I'm literally going to fly to his city tonight to spend time with him because I found out he's struggling with depression and anxiety. And I was talking to my wife, I was like, I want to ask him, like, are you addicted to porn? Because that's something I know him well enough that he wouldn't necessarily talk about to his small support system he has now, which is just his family. I'm like his first friend to find out he's like struggling. And Ariana was like, I don't think you should say addicted. Like, that's just so abrasive. Like, you should just say, do you watch porn? Because she's like, it doesn't matter what level of porn that you watch or how often, it's just not good in general. So should you label it addiction? And she's like, I think you should delete that from your vocab. I wanted to see what your guys' thought was on that.
Yeah, I mean that would make sense. Maybe that's a little bit less offensive to somebody. You could just say, do you struggle with porn, or do you watch porn, or have you watched porn? And maybe that's something I'll change in my intake form. I mean, a lot of guys come in like that's their thing they want to work on. But yeah, that's something I've asked directly.
Her argument was like, is any level okay? And then she's like, not really. It's not going to help you at all. So why even?
Absolutely not.
Addiction
not okay.
just makes it feel like it's only if you're abusing it.
Yeah, and I wouldn't, one, you're not a counselor, so you don't want to get in the labeling business. And even it's very specific what it has to be classified as an addiction based on the DSM. But just say, hey, I just want to explore some of the areas that you might be struggling in. Do you go to shopping when you don't feel good? Do you go to, and you can be gentle about it because food is one of them. If I don't feel good, I go to food. And then you can work your way into porn. Video games. Tell me about your video game use. How often are you using them? And just make it part of a conversation versus, and I was in the Addicted to the Monkey Mind, it said, we react as though somebody's judging us when they ask us about something we're already struggling with. And I thought that was one of the coolest and most profound things, is because, like, if Angel says, hey, do you do this? And I forget to do it, I'm immediately defensive. Why? Because that's something I already struggle with inside that I've let her down. I'm not good enough. I'm not enough for her. I immediately become defensive when she asks me, did you do that? And I'm like, well, I was busy. I mean, a client called. I mean, it's just a natural reaction. But that's because of the core beliefs I have inside of myself that I'm not enough and that I'm a failure and that I'll never be good enough for Angel. And so it's amazing, because if you're ask somebody, oh, do you watch porn? And they know they're struggling with it. Or are you addicted to porn? They're like, no, I mean, that's just stupid. Why would you ask me that? I mean, what do you see it on my face? I mean, it's like you instantly get defensive, but it's more when it's just that general conversation. And if you see somebody getting defensive, disarm that and say, man, I'm not judging you. I just want to understand. And it's, dude, I just want to talk with you. And you can always use, every man's in a battle that we know nothing about. And I tell my clients, I go, the cool part of my job is I get to hear your battle. And so it's not the isolation of I'm struggling. We're all struggling with something. Every single person you walk past on the street, they're struggling with something and we don't know what it is. Yeah. And you and I, we get to join you in that. And it's like, that's one of the greatest gifts of our job is I get to see what you're struggling, man. I'm going to get in the mud with you. I'm going to walk with you. We're going to get through this. Yeah. And just knowing there's somebody there that listens, that can hear you, they're not going to judge you, because who am I to judge you? Right. If you want to roll out my past, it ain't pretty, brother.
Yeah, and and according to research, the most effective, method, if you will, at least last time I checked, in counseling, is a therapeutic alliance or therapeutic relationship. how much does this person trust you and connect with you? So I spend a lot, and maybe I get that from my dad. My dad's like I just posted on my parents' 60th anniversary, and like I tagged my dad, and like 400 people are like happy, and like people just love my dad. I'm not sure why. It's just like, but he's just like a real guy. And my ADD just took over. I just totally lost my train of thought. I can't remember what else. Therapeutic Alliance. So I just spent a lot of time just really connecting with my client, and obviously Jason probably does a lot of the same thing. And so, I don't always share my testimony, but when I see the shame coming out, I'm like, hey, dude, so let me give you like 90 seconds of my story. Maybe they're struggling with porn, and so maybe my thing isn't porn, but it's like my drug past. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, this dude laid down everything in front of me, so I'm safe, right? And so a lot of addicts you will see as counselors, and that can be, for lack of a better term, an effective tool, because you're just putting it all out there in front of them and say, hey, I'm no better than you, bro. So whatever your shame is, I can probably trump you. And so now they feel heard and they feel safe to share. And then that's when you can get a lot of work done. So otherwise you're just kind of playing games.
Yeah, not waiting for the perfect opportunity to speak. Sometimes you just saying something you don't feel like is even necessary gets them to a place where it benefits them, like you're saying, which I feel like a lot of families and non-counselor people and friends and support groups can take that advice and use that, because sometimes staying quiet isn't helpful.
Yeah.
No, somebody's got to like free everybody else up. It's like some of my men's groups in the past, like, anybody going to talk here? I'm like, just like play house, or okay, here I go. Well, I'll share this guys with you guys. And then boom, like, oh yeah. Everybody started sharing, but somebody's got to like crack open the can kind of thing and give people permission to share, and when, I don't know if I should share this, but I will, but to this point. So I used to go to a relatively big church, and I've always shared my testimony, but there's part of my testimony that I really don't share or like to share. When I was, when you're partying and doing drugs, you're probably being promiscuous and all those things. And so I was like dating this girl, and she got pregnant, and, I was 22. I'm like, well, do you want the baby? She's like, no. I'm like, I don't want it either. I wasn't a believer. And I'm like, here's money. We'll take care of that. Just kind of like that, just kind of flip it about it, like right when that started. And so I'm not really understanding the gravity of that decision. And so God's forgiven me for that. I wasn't a believer. He'd still forgive me for that. But sometimes I think, that my child would be 22 now, whatever. And so I'm on stage, I'm sharing about my God story, and then I feel the Holy Spirit prompt me, like, you need to tell about the abortion. And I'm thinking in my head, oh no, not that one. Not that one. That crosses the line. Now I'm going to be shamed by everybody. Drugs is okay, like drug addict, but like, you aborted a baby, and I'm like, And so somehow, I shared, and then I shared the next service, because I had to do it twice. I'm like, I did it once, now I got to do it for the next service. Darn it. And so, but I had several women come up to me and just like crying, like, thank you, because I've carried the shame, and I don't feel like I've had a place to be able, I don't feel safe sharing that, and you freed me. I'm like, okay, God, if that's why I had to share that, then yes, then I'll do that. And so we never want to glorify our sin, right? But I remember being a youth pastor, and maybe I had somebody share, and he's giving his testimony, and then I made some bad choices in life, and then next story, I'm like, dude, give us a little something. Give me a little something to these kids so they can relate to you, other than I made a few bad decisions. You can keep it PG, but be authentic. And when you're authentic, you give people permission to do the same. So
If you don't share those, you rob God of being able to take glory for it. And that's where I think so many people are afraid to say, hey, this is me. And Angel grew up, both her parents were alcoholics. And she was ashamed to bring people over to the house. She didn't want them to see her drunk. They always would fight. And Angel would never talk and say, my parents were alcoholics, because she carried the shame of that. And being married to me, you dive deep into shame, because, I carried it. I made a song from a poem I wrote about shame. But she started sharing it, and she's like, oh my God, everybody's parents seemed like they were alcoholics, because she's willing to bridge that gap and go, mine were. And then people feel safe to talk to her about something they're struggling with. And if we don't share it, we're robbing the ability for God to use that hurt. If we don't share it, we went through it for nothing.
Exactly. God never wastes pain. It's one of the things I tell my clients all the time. Whatever you're going through, I know it sucks. You might not want to hear it, but God's not going to waste your pain. He's got a purpose in it.
And when you said you quit wrestling and you said, I wonder what would have, and I've analyzed my life, one yes or one no, you wouldn't be where you're at today. If you didn't quit wrestling, you may have died from addiction because you pushed through hard, and we were like, maybe if I would have done that, my life would be different. Yeah, your life would be absolutely different. But you may have never found your way to Christ. You may have never found in the client that you talk to that only you can help is because you quit wrestling at that point, and that was God's path for you because he wanted you to be you today, who you are, so that you can help that person that you never even know you were going to meet.
That's great. That can help people just release those former woulda, coulda, shoulda things.
I think in associating pain or downfalls in life with, instead of, oh man, what if, could have, to what are you trying to teach me? Show me why I'm going through this or why I went through this, and put a spotlight on it, and asking God to make it super intense. And I feel like he really always comes through with making it known. And then it's like you're producing a natural high, your own high.
Love natural.
Or a God-produced high, like in your life, and then it just sends you on that more God-aligned path, which is what everybody's chasing, is to be in full alignment with God and their relationship, right? So,
and that's the one thing that I think. So people will say, "Why did God let me get molested when I was 2?"
mm,
And it's not God let it. God goes, I'm going to take that. I didn't intend anything negative to happen to you, but I'm going to use that to strengthen you, to give you something. It's not God going, yeah, I want that child molested. That's the devil. And the devil is going to come and try to destroy every chance he can to get you to put your eyes to Christ. And Christ goes, cool, devil, you did that, but this is what I'm going to do with it. And did you read A Boy Called It?
Man, he's killing me. Like I look like I'm illiterate here. No, I didn't read that. I didn't read that.
No,
I did get through seminary, but like I cheated.
I'm not trying to call you out, but A Boy Called It, he chose to share his horrible child abuse that he grew up in. And he wasn't allowed to eat with the family. I mean, just every horrible child abuse. And every child abuse law we have today is because he was willing to share it. He has 3 presidential medals of honor because he's like, this is what I went through. You and I are mandatory reporters because of him. God didn't say, dude, I want you to hurt. God said, dude, you got a horrible deck of cards dealt to you, but here's what I'm going to do for greatness. And I always wonder, and I create an image in my head of somebody when I read their book. And one of my clients met him on a flight. And they said he was genuinely just one of the nicest human beings. And I'm like, I love it when it lines up with the image I have in my head.
Yeah, that's cool. That's so cool. Well, it's Romans 8:28, right? I know it's one of the overused verses, kind of like Philippians 4:13, which every bad athlete uses. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I'm going to dunk on LeBron. So like, that's not really what that means, but Romans 8:28, right? All things work together for good for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. Worldly translation is everything happens for a reason, blah, blah, blah.
divine intervention.
Right? And so, but really, if you, whether you're in traffic or you get a flat or you're sick or whatever, or you get a loss, if you truly believe Romans 8:28, then you don't need to like the situation you're in, but you can surrender to it as God's will, that he's going to use it. So I try to, when I'm pouting about whatever situation I'm in, I try to remind myself of that verse. And then getting back to the God high, it's like, just that's when you know, like if you're living in accordance with God is, if you talk about sexuality, if you're married and you're intimate with your wife, without getting too graphic, you don't feel bad. You feel good, during that and after that. There's no guilt. You watch porn, masturbation, right? Oof. Really, like, are you feeling good about that? No, you're not. And so that's just a conscious, like, you know it's not right. We know what's right and wrong. And so when we get those natural highs from God because we did good, or we served, or we connected with somebody, or we accomplished something, that's what we need to be chasing, right? And that's, hopefully the life that we can help model for others as we all struggle with our own sin and pain. So, and that's why I really like to work with young men, is to try to get them to pursue those things, get them away from these things that are pulling them down, because there's a lot.
So we're roundabout time, but I want to give you an opportunity. If you can deliver one message to anybody that watches this, what would you like to say to them so that they can hit, and let the Holy Spirit just guide whatever words it is, because there's somebody out there that's going to watch this that needs exactly what you're about to say.
Well, I would say, so being a little guy, I was never conscious of like my size until I got to high school. So I was a little wrestler guy. And then I get to high school and everybody's staring at me because I was like 4'9", like 80 pounds. I mean, I was tiny. And so then I became very self-conscious, and I didn't get facial hair until I was like 18 or 19 or whatever. So I became very insecure in high school. Thankfully, I had sports to give me some confidence. But I tell people, like, we waste a lot of time trying to be somebody that we're not. And so my last name's Ford, so I should probably drive a Mustang, but I've never had a Mustang. I've drove a Mustang, but there's a few Mustangs in our neighborhood, and they have a very distinct sound when they start, right? That a Camaro or a Corvette doesn't have. And so I'm like, we get screwed up in life when you were born to be a Mustang and you're trying to be a Corvette, or you're born to be a Mustang and you're trying to be a Camaro. God created you perfectly in his image. Now we need to allow him to prune us of our rough edges and be that best Mustang you can be. But as soon as you try to become somebody you're not, or try to become somebody the world says you should be, now you're not living in alignment with God's call on your life and who you should be. And that's when we get misaligned, and we get off and start chasing things that we shouldn't. So figure out who you are, figure out how God has gifted you, and really run in that lane and accept your height, your size, your appearance, your intellect, your ADHD, your not ADHD, your tendencies. Accept that all as God's package for you, and really like run with that and embrace it, and don't be shamed by that, and good things will happen.
Awesome. I hope you understand how Jason just tied back to the first chapter of the book, where you pour the work into yourself. To find the right person, you have to be the right person. And before you try to put yourself out there to date, really dive deep, become comfortable with who you are. And I tell people, you can only be you. Don't be anything else. So if you are struggling with, I'm okay the way I am, do the work, get into counseling, do something to get yourself okay so that you attract people who are mentally healthy. So that I'm not getting you in the office and the marriage where you're married to a man for tax purposes, and the girl has nothing to do with it, or you're on gay dating sites and your fiance has no idea, or your wife finds that out during marriage. Really attack those things with a great vigor, so that when you do find somebody, you're going to be the best version of yourself. Then you're going to attract people who are mentally healthy. So yeah, I really appreciate your time, Jason.
Yeah,
I really
thanks,
appreciate
brother.
you coming.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
This was fun.
Cool.
Anytime you want to do it again, let me know.
All right. Nice setup. I'll be back.
Thanks.
All right.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast.